So we feel that there is stronger pro-life legislation to be passed, and that this will ultimately hurt the movement going forward.
It may seem like a contrast or a surprise to some. Pro-life activists say they won't support an abortion bill moving through the state legislature that would tighten rules tied to abortions. The reason centers on a legal fight. The Catholic Church and Tennessee Right to Life expect the so-called heartbeat bill won't stand up to a legal challenge. The bill calls for making it illegal in Tennessee to have an abortion at about 6 weeks after conception.
Sponsors of the bill say they are ready to take the fight to the Supreme Court. 10 News reporter Cole Sullivan spoke with those lawmakers who are in Nashville preparing for a vote tomorrow. Cole.
John and Robin, it's not often that you see pro-life activists coming out against a pro-life bill, but they say this legislation in its current form doesn't have a chance of going into effect. They march for the same cause, but on this bill, they're moving in different directions.
We support the intention of the bill. It just doesn't look probable that it would end favorably in the courts.
Anti-abortion group Tennessee Right to Life is joining the Catholic Church and choosing not to support a pro-life bill in the state legislature.
We don't believe that this is the right strategy going forward.
The so-called heartbeat bill would ban abortions when an ultrasound detects a heartbeat. An OB doctor at UT Medical Center says that's about 6 weeks into a pregnancy, when the fetus is smaller than a blueberry.
This has been consistently struck down across the country.
The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled similar bills unconstitutional because it says abortion before a fetus is viable is allowed.
If we have to be the first, so be it.
Knoxville Representative Jason Zachary is one of the co-sponsors of the bill. He says changes in wording makes this bill different.
And we know it'll be litigated. However, ours has been amended to where we've taken out the word fetus, we've added the word pregnancy.
He says courts haven't ruled on that wording yet, and the lead sponsor of the bill thinks it will stand up if challenged.
Should this legislation be challenged, I believe it absolutely is a fight worth fighting.
But Tennessee Right to Life says it makes more sense to focus on legislation that has a chance of going into effect.
I think that there are certain members of the legislature and I think certain members of the grassroots movement that want to have their name on a lawsuit that goes to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Both the Tennessee Right to Life and the Catholic bishops in Tennessee say they support the Life Protection Act. Instead, that bill would immediately ban abortions if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Robin and John.
Cole, thank you very much. Planned Parenthood openly opposes the heartbeat bill, calling it unconstitutional. The Planned Parenthood here in Knoxville offers the abortion pill up to 10 weeks and 0 days after the start of a last period. After that time, they provide referrals to other health care providers. The organization believes all women have the right to make their own decisions.
A piece of legislation like this is a direct attack on women and their families. We believe that the decision to plan a family, whether that's to have children, to choose adoption or abortion, should be left up to the person who is pregnant.
So Planned Parenthood office also offers services like family planning, HIV testing, and even men's health care.